Why would a composer who's widely associated with innovation and inexhaustible creativity, especially within the domain of harmony, pick up the same bass line and its implied chord progression in two different compositions? What are the pieces in question? Are there any reasons for this kind of duplication, or is Chopin just lacking originality? I'm gonna tell you. The first example is the main theme of the celebrated waltz in E minor that Chopin wrote when he was around 20 years old. But as popular as this piece may be in today's repertoire, Chopin for some reason withheld it from publication throughout his lifetime. I'm gonna play the first page from a posthumous edition that's been published in 1915 under the supervision of none other than Claude Debussy. This exquisitely catchy theme is constructed on top of a ridiculously simple bass, an ascending scale beginning on the leading note that climbs upwards until it hits the 5 for the cadential leap. On the layer of harmony, this is just as lucid, a succession of two binary modules of dominant progressions that form the first 4-bar unit and a common 4-5-1 cadence as closing module. Here's a harmonic reduction. In the second half, he's actually putting these nice additional suspensions in the upper voice. Now the second example that I bet you are as well familiar with. These were the first 8 bars of the second piece of the Opus 25 Etudes collection. What you probably didn't notice was that significant compositional features are actually identical with that of the E minor waltz. The bass line is exactly the same for the cadential chords and the first inversion dominant on the 7th degree as opener. The only difference is on a quite molecular level. Instead of the dominant 7th, he this time applies a diminished 7th chord to the 2nd degree, which can be seen as a functional derivative of the ordinary dominant 7th inversion. Doesn't make much of a big difference, right? So what's that all about? Actually, one could go that far that these bass lines and their implied harmony aren't even Chopin's own original invention, as both of them clearly relate to a pedagogical concept that was a crucial feature of 18th and 19th century musical education that's been taught to countless composers and amateur musicians and is commonly known as rule of the octave. The concept of a standardized harmonization as rule of thumb for a bassline and stepwise motion can be traced back to the early 17th century, and from around 1700 on it was a standard component of almost every treatise on figured bass or composition all over Europe. This is one of the most popular treatises of that kind. David Kellner's Treulicher Unterricht im Generalbass from around 1737 that circulated in somewhat 30,000 copies before 1800 has been translated to Russian, Dutch and Swedish, and that even Johannes Brahms still had a copy of. The chart shows the common scales in use and above them the most common figurations that should be applied. Here is a transcription transposed to F minor. An explanation of the entire nature of this device would be quite far-reaching, so I just want to highlight its key components, which are dominant progressions on the one hand and pre-cadential standard chords on the other. This is just one of countless possibilities to realize it. And now guess what? In one way or the other, this concept was taught to Chopin as well when he studied in Warsaw with his teacher Joseph Elsner, to whom he went 6 days a week for counterpoint lessons. What you see here is the rule of the octave in Elsner's own handwriting, and you can be sure that the young Chopin had to transpose this kind of exercises to all keys and would have applied figurative motives like in these examples by Kalkbrenner. A prevalent misunderstanding of this concept is to perceive it as fixed and coherent rule. It actually should be seen rather more like an open dynamic continuum regarding alternative figures, chords, chord combinations, and voice leading options. Any attempt to approach this continuum systematically will inevitably lead to damn complex charts and will depart from the original idea of a rule of thumb. Even wider is the compositional space when it comes to figurative individualizations and stylistic range. I'm gonna demonstrate this by realizing Chopin's original bassline in the manner of two different 18th century styles. The first one is in the style of a classical slow movement. We could even go back a bit further. Same bassline, slightly different figurations as Baroque Allemande. I show you another crucial thing about this bassline concerning the topic of key digression and modulation. A common way to modify it would be to integrate a digression to the upper median. The crux is that this digression is being realized by a cutout of the rule of the octave of the related key, in this case A flat major, so the stepwise ascent from G to A flat is kind of re-evaluated as a 7-to-1 motion to A flat major, in more modern terms a secondary dominant. I'm gonna realize this in some sort of a Schumanesque album leaf. As a matter of fact, the rule of the octave contains the implicit possibility of being used as a modulation device. You've seen that I close with a cadence that led back to the original key of F minor. In case you want to confirm the new key of A flat, you have to attach a cadence that leads to A flat. This could be done, for example, throughout a 4-5-1, just like in F minor. And guess what? Chopin is doing exactly the same thing when he repeats the phrase of the beginning from bar 9 on. I guess that's it for today, but I surely will upload more content in the near future concerning the topic of the rule of the octave and its implications.